Hi, I'm Megan Finnerty. I'm part of the USA Today Network, and I'm here with AZ Central and ASU to help connect you to educational resources, best practices, and good ideas for this time where we are #stay home, but we're still trying to figure out how to keep our kids connected and educated and ourselves sane. What we're going to talk about right now is the whole idea of running a school at home, which is kind of what you've been asked to do, can be pretty overwhelming for most parents and people at home. And so we want to talk to a few experts about where you can get started to minimize that feeling of anxiety and maximize the harmony and educational opportunities in your house. So we're going to open up right now with Amy McGrath. She's Associate Vice President for ASU, and she's a Chief Operating Officer for ASU Prep Academy. We also are hearing from Sergio Chavez. He's a father, but he's also president of the Arizona Parent-Teacher Association. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, well, we are excited to learn from your best practices. So Amy, we were talking earlier that learning from home, we're about a month in, and it still feels like a totally new world for most parents. How should they get started at reframing these next weeks and months ahead?
Well, I would agree. This is no joke, right? So I've been in education for 20 years and I've been a mom for 12 years, and both are noble, but hard roles on their own, but put them together and it's a whole new world. So I agree with you, but I think one of the things that is important for each of us to do is cut ourselves some slack. Every day is a new day, and we have so many expectations on ourselves day after day to accomplish so much, but being able to kind of set yourselves up with schedules that make sense and inject joy in every one of your days is a really great start.
I love that suggestion. I think that is awesome. You also mentioned that parents are really wearing two hats throughout the day. So talk to us about what that looks like practically.
Well, yeah, you might be wearing multiple hats because you're not just running your house, you're running a home school, like you said at the beginning of the show. And that can be a difficult task, especially when you might have animals to take care of and a husband who's working. So some of the tricks that we really advise to families at home trying to pull this off, sometimes with just one device, is to set up a pretty standard schedule and let your kids give you feedback. Trying to take on too much can often be stressful and difficult for the entire household. So setting up reasonable goals and maybe even cycling through what that work looks like, having your the dad pitch in and doing work cycles for dual working families and giving everyone a break is a really great way. And finding those resources that really make an impact and help your family. One of those resources for us, I have 3 kids, is our ASU for You website, where ASU's taken all of our best digital assets and made them applicable for learners at every stage and every age. And so I have my kids start there, and they get to do things like virtual field trips and really get a chance to challenge themselves and think differently about learning. And so we view that as an opportunity for sure, because not every day you get to learn from home with your brothers and sisters and your dad and your mom. So we're trying to find the silver lining in all of this and do things a little bit different and just be comfortable and roll with it.
Oh my gosh, that sounds like you guys have such a good attitude. Sergio, you had some really good insights too, though, about how parents can sort of contextualize this moment, where you said it's really a return to your role as a teacher.
Yeah, well, kind of touching on what she had just said, dads do a little bit more than pitch in. I just want to throw that in there because I'm a very involved father, and I know a lot of very involved fathers. But as I was saying, the returning, that parents are technically the first teachers that children have. So we are the ones that have to start up and get back to that same role, teaching them, I guess, bonding more with your kids. A lot of parents right now don't even know their kids because they just, they're used to the whole setup, the routine of sending them, dropping them off at school and then picking them up. And then, okay, how was school? Oh, it was okay. And they leave it at that. So now you can't do that anymore. You can't just say, how was school and whatnot. So you're actually involved in there and you're helping with them. And I do that with my daughter. My wife also does that with her daughter. We're both trying to work from home as well. So it is rough having to juggle, as you would say, your education. I mean, the education for the child and home life and everything. But you got to find a happy balance in there. So.
You were saying that you really felt like you knew how hard this was because you have a teenage daughter, a group of people that are not always known for being really forthcoming and super chatty about what's going on.
Yeah, I like the fact that we're actually being able, and I hate to say force, but that's what happened, to be there with your children. But you get to know them, you get to actually talk to them, you get to find out. Now I know what my daughter's favorite band is, or what her color is, or which team kid now she likes, who she doesn't, what show she likes, and it's actually cool. So you actually get to know now, to get to start, I guess, in a way, start finding out about your kid. And a lot of parents haven't had that, but with this going on, it's a good way to start that relationship again.
Sergio, you made a great point about dads pitching in. My husband is one of those dads that pitches in quite a bit. He is a PE teacher, and so he takes the kids outside quite a bit. They created a slip and slide with an outside tarp yesterday, so that was PE. I needed to cook dinner early for a late meeting that evening, so I brought my kids inside and we cooked together, and I consider that an elective. So I think coming up with creative and fun ways to change up your day is a really helpful way, like we said earlier, to really inject joy and create a kind of a culture and a love of learning.
Well, go ahead.
No, I really appreciate that. Sergio, I was going to ask you, you were talking about, to build on what Amy said, you were talking about how you're really trying to use this moment to help your daughter think about skills building, not just academic learning. Because in high school, she is certainly learning really rigorous things. You said she's in AP classes, but you also mentioned that you guys are pursuing Girl Scout badges and doing learning how to drive. Tell us about how you're using this time.
Yeah, so you want to break the monotony of this just being on the computer and learning. Because she does take AP classes, she's doing 4 hours. Instead, the recommended is 2 hours, what everybody else is doing, but she's doing 4 hours of studying on that. So you don't want to just you want to break that routine and do something different on it to recharge your batteries, if you will. So yes, my daughter is a Girl Scout. My wife is a Girl Scout troop leader as well. So there's a auto badge that you could get. So she learned how to change a flat tire. She learned how to jump start a car. She learned how to jack up a car. So that those are actual life skills that a lot of these kids don't have anymore. They got rid of home ec. They got rid of shop. So they don't know how to do all these simple things on it. And otherwise they just call for, AAA. But I want my daughter to be self-sufficient also. And yes, she's 15. So I am taking this time to also take her out to go learn how to drive. So that's what you want to do. I want to make sure that she's able to be self-reliant on herself on it, and also showing her skills like sewing. What I do is I do custom apparel, custom sewing and whatnot, and she's learning how to do that as well. So it's just getting away from just the education part, but to learn life skills as well. So it's pretty cool.
Amy, Sergio, I appreciate that. I especially was like, oh my gosh, to be learning how to drive a car on relatively empty streets right now, that sounds like a dream for a high schooler. Amy, you were talking about how you're hoping to help your kids connect the dots, that this is an opportunity for lifelong learning.
Yeah, that's a huge area of self-reflection for myself. I think being a part of an institution like Arizona State University, who is committed to lifelong learning, this is an opportunity to make it really personal. And so what better way to demonstrate the love of learning than to be the lead learner in your family? So I think that parents, even though it's really hard, sometimes there's only one parent at home, or sometimes there's other stressors that make it difficult. But being able to take a deep breath and finding the joy and having the time, like Sergio said, to get to know your kids in a different way through teaching them is huge. And I think if we are able to come alongside our kids and express that we're learning with them. This morning, I had to remind myself on YouTube how to subtract fractions. And I think it was really important for my kids to see that and for them to teach me. And that is what mastery is all about. So when I see them teaching me and them understanding that I'm a learner as well, in a family of lifelong learning, I think this has been an opportunity to embed this into the culture of our family, which is a great opportunity.
I love that. Well, listen, thank you both, Amy and Sergio, for your insights and to all of what you guys have been talking about. I really appreciate you helping us, feel a little better, make a little bit more of a game plan. And certainly both of you have talked about how your attitude as a parent can influence your kids' attitudes about this moment. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Now we're going to talk about what kids stand to lose when they're away from school for so long. I want to bring up Carol Basile. She's the Dean at Arizona State University's Teachers College. Carol, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome.
And Carol, looks like you are in your office.
I am in my office.
You are socially distant. You're the only one there.
That's true.
Okay, well, we are lucky to have you today. So the first thing I want to ask you is, right now, people are trying to learn while an official crisis pandemic is happening outside their homes. What does this look like for most families? Can you help contextualize? Because I feel like people think they're alone in this moment.
Oh gosh, so we're on Zoom calls every day, back to back, and there are lots of kids on those Zoom calls, right? So lots of people at home trying to work, lots of people who still are providing a lot of services for all of us who actually are going to work, who have kids at home, who are trying to figure out childcare and how to do school and all of that. And so there are those who are at home trying to figure it all out, and those who are out trying to work, maybe working multiple jobs, trying to figure this out, on top of everybody who's lost a job, dealing with the stress of just everyday stress and health issues and all kinds of things, right? Trying to figure this out.
It seems like it's obviously, we know that people are anxious, kids feed on that anxiety, but also that the actual flow of their classroom work, some kids are getting worksheets, some kids are moving to totally online classes, some kids they say are getting packets and maybe have, maybe haven't. How can do you have any advice for parents about it seems all over the place depending on what school system you're in.
Right. So I think it is all over the place depending on what school system you're in. So I think you've got to make the best of what you have in your situation right now. I think the imperative is going to be what happens when we go back, and how do we make up for learning loss, and how do we think about where kids left off, which kids have been able to continue, which kids have not been able to continue. And I think that's going to be both a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, I think, for the education system.
When we think about what, there's always they call it summer melt, right? For what kids lose over the summer. Yeah. How are school systems ramping up to fill in some of this gap? You said that some kids might be away from school for 3 months. It might be as long as 6 months. We don't know. So how can our school systems help prepare to shore us up?
Well, I think there are lots of things that are happening right now as I talk to school districts and our school district partners, and they're thinking about blended, they're thinking about personalized learning, they're beginning to think about a number of different things. We are thinking about how we can create an army of community educators who can support and help and provide sort of technical roles for teachers so that they're not alone and they're not trying to figure all this out when they get back and are looking at 30 kids in a classroom who now have had a variety of different kinds of learning or made progress or not. So I think, everybody's going to have to dive in and figure this out. I think that's going to be the imperative now for fall whenever we start.
I know so many parents are anxious about their kids falling behind, right? I mean, I'm sure under the best of circumstances, parents are afraid that their kid is not, sort of achieving at the top. I know we were concerned, though. Right now, I've heard that fewer than 20% of Arizona students have everything they need to be able to take their classes digitally or keep up with a typical curriculum. Does that number sound right? And if so, I mean, that's pretty harrowing.
That is pretty harrowing. And I could imagine that is true. I think a large part of Arizona is rural. We don't think about those areas, both rural and tribal areas where students do not have access to digital tools. And I think it's a problem, and it's one that we're going to have to tackle, and we're going to have to figure it out.
Yeah, it definitely looks like, I know people are getting ready for the fall and they're afraid the achievement gap and the equity gap are likely to widen in this moment. And I assume, there are lots of smart people thinking about okay, you mentioned community educators. What does that look like? When will the cavalry arrive and what might it look like?
Well, we can't get there fast enough, right? I mean, I think there's an urgency around that in trying to figure out what that content is. What do these people need to know? We're a large college that prepares a number of teachers, but these folks don't have to know everything that a professional teacher needs to know, but they need to know something to be able to help those professional teachers. So we're in the process now of trying to figure that out, trying to build roles. We're working with our school partners to do that. In the meantime, we're trying to also provide a lot of other resources. Again, Amy talked about ASU for You. And I think that's also an important thing that is happening at the university, where we've got Ask a Biologist that's been around for a long time, and lots of tools that we think that parents can begin to use, that students can start coming to college earlier, that high school kids have access to college and courses. But there's an urgency around all of this and all of these resources that we've got to step up and start revolutionizing education. I think we're now at that time.
It seems like that's what I'm hearing, that there are certainly people scrambling to make lots of new opportunities available, or sort of like patch in these fixes. And the longer this lasts, I'm sure new methods and new best practices will happen. And so what are some of like the bright spots you've seen? Like, we know there are buses going out that have hotspots on them, and people are getting laptops and iPads in the hands of more students to help close that digital gap. What are some other good news things that you're hearing of people getting things right?
I think philanthropists are coming to the table. I think they're thinking about this. They're trying to figure out how to close some of that gap, particularly around the thing that we typically call the digital divide. So I think everybody's trying to get their head around what does this mean. And it's one thing, for school to be out now and through summer. It's another thing if we have to go back late in the fall, or if districts are starting to think about hybrid, because we go back and then we have to stop again and then go back. So nobody really knows, but I think there are a lot of people that are trying to think about all of these different scenarios and develop what those, what they're going to need right now. So I think there are, the biggest glimmer of hope, right, is not the programs and projects and activities. It is going to be new systems that are built. And I think we're just on the edge of that, but I think that's the real opportunity here.
Well, Carol, that kind of optimism is very welcome these days. So I appreciate you sort of closing us out on that note. Thank you so much for your insights and your work.
Yep, you're welcome. Thanks.
Now we'll hear from my colleague, Lily Altavina. She's an education reporter at AZ Central in the Arizona Republic, and she's got some good news for us about what's working in school districts across the state. Thanks so much for being with us, Lily.
Thank you.
So we want to get things started off at Wilson Elementary. You mentioned this is historically in a lower income district in Phoenix, but where they're really getting things right for the kids. Talk to us.
Yeah, so the kids in Wilson definitely have some obstacles, like access to internet, access to laptops, but Wilson was one of the first districts in the state to get an online program up and running. So 3 days after the governor announced school would be closed, Wilson, had laptops to students, had internet access for students, got them all set up. I actually got to be on one of those, early online classes, and it was really sweet to hear kids connecting with their teacher, kids connecting with each other. And that's just one of the innovative ways we're seeing schools adapt to this.
And you said local nonprofits helped buy laptops for students?
Yeah, and we're seeing a lot of different ways schools are trying to connect kids to the internet, because it's not easy for every kid, as Dean Bazile was saying. Sunnyside Unified down in Tucson, they already had buses equipped with Wi-Fi, and they know some of their students don't have Wi-Fi. So they actually just said, let's get those buses all around the neighborhood. We'll use those buses to hand food out to the kids who need it, but also use those buses as Wi-Fi hotspots. So kids are, walking up to the school bus, still socially distancing, grabbing some food, opening their laptop, and getting online to get schoolwork done.
That is such good news out of Tucson. You also said Scottsdale Unified is doing something clever for seniors.
Yeah, one of the things we've heard is how much of a bummer this is for seniors. They're missing out on prom, they're missing out on graduation. Some are confronting issues with scholarships and even wondering if they're going to be able to go to college next year because school might be closed still. So Scottsdale seniors put together a very sweet video where they tell each other it's going to be okay. You know, it's a way to say goodbye if graduation doesn't happen, or even if graduation doesn't happen immediately.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, that's really touching because I can't imagine. I know some school districts across the country are talking about postponing graduation until like the late summer, early fall even. So it's good to hear that like the kids themselves are getting together to like be there for one another. But you also mentioned virtual field trips. Tell us who's doing that and what it's like.
Yeah, virtual field trips are super adorable. You've seen teachers really take the distance learning concept and running with it. So you can have all the virtual guests you want. And so it's a Horace Elementary teachers, including, teacher Amber Jewell, got civil rights activist Ruby Bridges on their lesson for the day on civil rights. So who better to teach kids than civil rights activists who actually desegregated schools in the 1960s as a kid. They also got Joshua Tree National Park to show them animals. So kids are seeing all different parts of the world and all different parts of the country.
Well, it's inspiring to hear about how teachers and school systems and students are all pivoting to be there for each other and to keep learning. Lily, I know you have to report on a lot of stuff that's like doom and gloom sometimes. So we appreciate these light glimmers of hope.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lily. Now we're going to talk to elementary school teacher Amber Jewell out of Mesa. And the point of this segment is to help you figure out what can you expect from your school systems as a parent. Amber's going to walk us through a lot of things because Amber is a second grade teacher by day and a second grade mom by night. How are you, Amber? Thanks for being with us.
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, so Amber, you said that your school system, you think, did a couple things right away. And so we want to talk about what are the 5 things parents can reasonably ask for or expect from their school.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that the first thing that a parent should expect from their school is a sense of community. We're each in our own homes, away from the people that we generally spend our time with. And just having that sense of community helps make the kids and their families feel like they're still part of something. And so something that my campus did is our principal does a read aloud 3 times a week. Sometimes he brings guest speakers in. As Lily mentioned in the last segment, he brought in Ruby Bridges. We also did a community parade where all of the teachers drove through the neighborhood and waved at the kids, which they really loved.
That sounds so affirming because I know that so many kids and parents kind of feel like they're just like floating out there in space and, they're not part of an everyday community. You were also mentioning that there's a way to make school feel more like inviting. Specifically, you said an invitation to learn. Tell me what that is and how it works.
Yeah, so we send out learning invitations. We know that every family has a different circumstance. Sometimes they have 2 parents working from home. Sometimes there's not enough technology to go around. And so we send out invitations each week for families to use to help guide themselves as they navigate home learning. So for example, if they're doing math, there might be something online like prodigy.com, or we'll give them a link to a worksheet that they can do as well.
Amber, a lot of parents right now have a lot of shoulds right now. How much should I be teaching? How much should my kid be working? And how much should they be learning? And I think most of us don't normally have all those shoulds. We just send our kids to school and we assume it's going to work out. Can you talk to us about how your school system has set expectations for all those shoulds with parents, teachers, and students?
Yeah, so Mesa Public Schools has been really great about communicating expectations with parents, teachers, and students. Teachers are expected to be available from 7:30 to 3:30 every day. We get online with students throughout the day, connecting with them. Parents know that this should not look like a full school day. We're not replicating the 6-hour school day that we normally have. And also students know what's expected through teacher communication.
You also said it's really important to have certain days of the week that you expect to hear from your teachers and that they expect to hear from you. Otherwise, you said people are just like constantly refreshing their email, hoping they didn't miss some note from a teacher.
Yeah, we work really hard to send all of our communication out on one day. For us, it's Mondays. We send out our learning invitations on Mondays. Our principal will send out an email just giving any updates, telling us who is going to join him for read alouds that week. And so it gives parents, even me as a parent, something to look for. I can say, okay, I need to go back and look in my email on Monday for my preschoolers learning invitation, for my second graders learning invitation. And oh, I don't know where the Zoom link is or the WebEx link is for the principal's read aloud. I know I found it on Monday. Let me go down in my emails and find it there. So I'm not searching all over the place for the email I'm looking for.
God, that sounds like a dream. So the last thing I'm going to ask you about is, you said that all day long, which sounds totally surreal to me, you are touching base with students in the second grade on Zoom calls, and that this is something a lot of your peers are doing too. Tell us about like video conferencing with kids.
So something that we do during the regular school year is conferencing with kids. And so we were trying to figure out, how do we maintain these conferences with kids when we're not in the classroom? And so lots of us are meeting with kids one-on-one for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and just talking to them. You know, I'll go into a conference and say, what do you want to work on today? And some of them will decide, I want to work on writing. I want to work on 3-digit addition and subtraction because I'm really struggling with this. And so it's great because it still allows us to have a relationship with our students that we had in the classroom. It just looks a little different.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I also can't imagine ever wanting to work on 3-digit addition and subtraction, but that's just me.
I actually have an anchor chart in the other room from when I did it with the kids earlier today.
I have to go Google anchor chart. Anyway, Amber, thank you so much for those insights, and thank you for working so hard to keep Mesa's kids educated. I appreciate you.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks to all of you for watching and being curious about how you can connect more deeply to educational resources and support for your kids. We hope that this show has brought you some insights, some tips, but most of all, a sense of community, that you are not in it alone, and that you probably should try to offer yourself and your little learners a little bit of slack and grace this time. Have a good one.